Thank you so much. Y'all gotta sit down, otherwise I think we're leaving. We gotta start with this, Chattanooga. I gotta, make something clear. Portion control. Apparently, nobody here understands that because the breakfast that I had this morning apparently is gonna hold me over till Wednesday. That was the biggest omelet I have ever had in my entire life. I'm thinking, did the brother just take an entire dozen eggs and put it in here? I'm just about to be honest with you. I put money into my clothes. How can I come down here? This is an investment. Now I got to keep my jacket button so I don't look silly. Thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. Really, I want to take a second to acknowledge the organizers of this event. I can't say all the names because I don't know all of them, but I know a couple of them over here. Can y'all please stand, please? It's fantastic when you get, especially African American groups, to come together to do an event. Because one thing that black people have mastered is the meeting. We can meet. Black folks, ain't that a website or something black people meet? Y'all laughing because you really know. It just ended up in my inbox with some other inappropriate things that I'm supposed to be concerned about. But that, some of y'all apparently know. So, because we will, in our meetings, we get it done, right? We have Robert's rules and everything. From front to back, we will meet, not necessarily always execute, but meet, we can do. You have executed, and my hat goes off to each one of you. I am honored to be here. This is a fantastic event, easily one of the best I've ever seen. The fact that you've been able to bring together people from all over the community to have an honest conversation on a Saturday, beautiful Saturday, by the way, that is going to be, at times, tough. At times tough, because we have to be honest that everybody in Chattanooga ain't doing well.
Right. Amen.
There's the proverbial tracks that are supposed to be crossed. I think I crossed them a couple times on the way here. And there's some people who are doing just fine, and a little more than fine, and there's some people who are really not. And we're going to have a conversation about how it is that we take the community and make it such that the community comes together. Because if we think of the word community, there's some roots to it, right? There's the come part that means to move towards, right? Commute, right? When we say commute, that means to go somewhere. Typically, it means go somewhere that you've been before. And then there's that unity part where we commute, we come together for a purpose. Now, it just so happens that we've come together for the purpose of our children, but we have to be honest with ourselves. If we really truly come together for the purpose of our children, if we're not prepared to change the circumstances that made us come together in the first place. See, we have to hold each other accountable, because if we truly wish to come together, then we have to expect that we, and in fact, have not been together up to this point. It doesn't mean that there's strife between people. It just means that we need to come together, and we need to come together in such a way that all children's needs are seen as valuable on the same level. There are those who have the conversation about diversity. I got to be honest with you, I'm not in the diversity conversation. Because the diversity conversation often means to invite a black person to the conversation that you're already having. Where we're going to talk about what you're already talking about. And the expectation is that we will behave appropriately by making sure that we agree with the conversation. There are those who would have a conversation about equality. I'm not sure that's the conversation I'm necessarily interested in. Because the disadvantages have been unequal for so long that you can't give me just what you're giving somebody else and expect that I'm going to catch up.
Amen.
So we're going to have a conversation about community or coming to unity. Then what we have to do is understand that some of us are going to have to accept the fact that some of us earned some things and some of us maybe didn't. See, in order for us to have this honest conversation, we have to recognize that in order for the community to come together, there has to be a realization that some people have been systematically left out. that individuals and organizations have had to come together in order to somehow overcome what has been a system that has said that certain people, black people in particular, Latinos and poor people, have for some reason or another not been invited to the conversation in such a way that their voices are as valuable as the others. Now recognize the difference. It's one of the things that when I looked at the Democratic National Convention, I saw all these people, and they were fantastic for staging. I mean, they had all these different colored people with different genders and supposedly sexual orientations, and all these people came up and said the same daggone thing. That's diversity. I ain't cool with that. Because what I'm looking for is a space in which individuals can speak their true heart and mind and be heard and respected as such. We cannot have a community, a coming together of people around a single idea, thus unity, until such time as we've acknowledged that there are different ideas in play. And those different ideas come from a place in which there are different experiences where people who have been left out for generations have now come to a place where they're looking around and saying, hey, this really don't make sense to me. Why exactly am I being left out? Why is it that I'm expected somehow to accept this circumstance as if it was something that I earned? These, in fact, are truly unearned disadvantages. And because they're unearned disadvantages, they therefore cannot be heaped upon us forever. We have to accept that in order for us to move forward as a community, in order for us to commute, some people who are currently in positions of power are going to have to accept that there's about to be a new power structure. See, everybody can agree with diversity, because diversity doesn't necessarily cost you anything. But this community thing could actually cost. Because what it will require is that individuals, both black and white, who somehow now occupy a space of power, have to acknowledge that in so doing, in their occupation, that they have not necessarily earned it. That the system was set up to ensure that certain people were successful and certain people are not. You'll often hear people have a conversation about how the education system is broken. I disagree. It is working fantastically well. It is doing everything it was designed to do. It was designed to make sure that African American, Latino, and poor people did not gain access to a quality education. And as such, it has done so for generations. It has, in fact, time upon time, so effectively produced the same results that people who are African American, Latino, and poor have in fact begun to believe that this is exactly the way it was supposed to be. Not just that, but in fact they did something wrong to somehow fall short. When if we were really being honest, you cannot say that you put together a system in 1635. 1635, where children are sent to school closest to their house, so they can go to school with like children. Keep that system in place in 2016. I'm going to take you back for a minute to what happened in 1635. If we were doing a reenactment, you know how some people like to do Civil War reenactments? I don't think I want to do that. Can we pick another era? I'm not wearing that costume. But the fact is, and this is truly a fact, that this system that sets children up to fail, God, folks, you gotta hear what we're saying. We're talking about sending children to schools that many of us would never send our children to. Yeah. And then blaming them for failing in them. When everybody in here could run their hands on the school in which they know they would send their child to, and know that there's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 children in there on Monday morning. community? Are we really talking about that? Are we stuck on this diversity thing where the black kid gets to play on the white team because he's really good? Bring me your talents, sir. That's part of that reenactment thing that I ain't really too cool with. We've all seen it. We have no problem with a child who's African American, Latino, or otherwise somehow ending up at a suburban school and everybody knows daggone well he don't live there. You know it, I know it. You ain't never seen him buy a house. Listen, I'm going to tell you, I didn't realize that black people buying houses in white neighborhoods was such an interesting thing until I did it. It apparently is fascinating. It apparently is one of, I watched the entire group of people just stand there and watch people move stuff into our house. And they stood there like they were really about something to happen. Like their heads were moving. So you know who lives where. You know who lives where. Everybody knows who lives where. I've seen the tracks, so to speak. So we know that the system was set up to ensure that certain people didn't gain access. Well, if we say that we really want to come together to have a community conversation, then we have to ask ourselves the question, how much are we willing to pay for it? By pay, I don't mean money. Let's just be clear. This is not a cash conversation. This is about something even more powerful than cash. It's power. Who here is willing to give their seat up? A seat that maybe you didn't earn. Because if the system was set up to ensure that one group of people, in fact, was successful and the other one wasn't, then if you are successful, you have to presume on some level you might have benefited from some unearned advantages. See, that's when it gets really uncomfortable. See, it gets really uncomfortable because if I just got up here and I was a motivational speaker and said, just dream your big dreams and anything you want to be, you just be, all you have to do is dream to achieve. That's what people want me to come in and tell children. They want me to come and tell children, if all you do is just dream big, anything can happen. I'm not lying to kids. One of the reasons me and kids get along real well, like, I don't necessarily like them. I mean, you know, you don't like them either. And if you have middle school kids, you really don't like them. Middle school kids don't like middle school kids. And then if you got like one freshman in high school, I went somewhere, I'm sorry, I'm going to come back to this conversation. They got so much mouth. You're like, are you serious? You must really could fight right now. You must really. So, one of the reasons kids and I get along is because I'm going to be honest with them. I want them to understand that there's a system put in place that in fact was not meant for them to be successful. And that in order for them to be successful, they have to in fact overcome the system. So it's not enough that they get an A in a school that's an F, because all that will mean is that they have an F. Maybe I missed this group over there. Come over this side. Some people over here might have heard it, maybe over there I'll work my way down. If you get an A in an F school, you still have an F. And so if we send children to F schools, and even if they got A's, they have a F.
Wow. Preaching.
So if we say it's about community or coming together or coming towards unity, then we have to accept that we have to do something differently, because the commute that we've been taking up to this point has been taking us to the same exact place, which is a nowhere for so many of us. And the truth is that Chattanooga cannot become this amazing community until such time as it acknowledges that up to this point, there are quite a few citizens who just haven't been invited. Now, of course, everyone wants us to have the most polite of conversations. Y'all are polite now, I ain't gonna lie. You know, when I hear about bad things happening outside, I think, how's it possible that someone says, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am? Every time I stop, somebody offers me something to eat. I'm not even playing. I'm still next day, somebody say, you want something to drink? No! I am full. Is that a concept that is lost on y'all? As a point in which people up north, we don't look. Y'all come up to my house, I'm offer you something one time. You say no to me, you're done. You should say yeah the first time. Don't get hungry later because that's your behind. That's not my fault. When I was offering, you should say yes. But down here, not so much. Down here, not so much. You ate. If I sit down, somebody takes something out your pocket. The fact is that we have to keep in mind that even in being polite, we've been impolite to quite a few people. There's a violence that comes out of poverty, not just a violence in the physical sense where people actually hurt each other. It's something more insidious than that. It's the self-hate that grows when you're in the darkness of poverty. The feeling that you doubt your own capacity. And what's fascinating to me, especially down south, is y'all got a church every 45 steps. Big ones. Like, is that still a church? Yeah. Goes all the way down there. They own 275 acres. Y'all got churches down. You know how to make a church. So in a place where so many people are so religious and so polite, what the hell y'all doing? I mean, I come here as your brother. I'm trying to understand. How is it possible for you to be so polite and so religious and to know what's going down? What brand of Christianity is that? That somehow justifies in your mind that it's all right to send any child to a school that you would send your child to. I don't know what version of the Bible that is that allows for such things to occur, but the ones that I've read talks about taking care of the least among us. When folks start washing other folks' feet, they do so with an expectation that they are humbling themselves, that they are taking care of the least among us, that they are in fact standing up for something that is so powerful that they will lower themselves in a very physical way, that they will forfeit their position, their father's position. Y'all wouldn't hold on. I think I'm they with me? Jordan, they got me? All right. When your father and grandfather give you a position, and you call yourself a Christian, and you are polite, then you have to acknowledge that that position was in fact given to some folks, and therefore cannot be earned by other folks. And in order for us to truly have a community, a coming together, we have to accept the reality that this system is man-made. The system that says that some children will therefore not get access to a quality education and ostensibly will be in a position where they don't learn enough to be effective in a classroom and therefore stop believing in themselves and as such will not go on to the next level of college. And if they do, they will be in remedial classes forever until such time as they leave college, come back without a degree, without the skills that are necessary. They can't even work in a Volkswagen plant.
Yeah.
And so what happens is then we have to bring people from other communities who figured it out, who taught their kids what it was that every child should have learned, and then they can come down and take your job. Be mad all you want. But the polite thing, the church thing, have to yield a new thing. And the new thing has to be a new paradigm. A paradigm shift, one in which you create a school system that allows for all children to go to the very best schools and the other schools that no child is forced into ever again. That no matter what you believe should happen in your neighborhood, you understand that you live in Chattanooga and that's your neighborhood. It's strange really how we do that. How we can somehow become so provincial that we focus on our neighborhood, not realizing that it's our community that defines us. You can tell me what street you live in, I don't know. You can tell me what your address is, I wouldn't know. In many cases, right, every community has a side, right? They call this particular part of the community something as a name, right? Everyone has them. But the fact is that all these kids are your kids. I don't care if they're black kids or white kids, poor kids or rich kids, Latinos, Latinas, or otherwise, Asians, pick whichever group you want. They're all yours. Every single one of them are yours. And the fantastic thing is they've watched you come together this weekend, but coming together for what? Are we back to black people meeting? See, it's not enough that we just meet. We have to produce something. A good meeting has a product. So what will we do now? Anyone can come up here and tell you anything, but the point is that you have to do something. And I submit to you that something that you need to do is to consider how you're going to work your school system such that it ensures that all children gain access to a quality education, period, bar none. That you find the successful schools and you replicate them. You invite individuals and organizations in to take over opportunities to create better schools. If it's vouchers, then you create vouchers. Whatever the case is, whatever you need to do, whatever you need to do. Because when you truly commit to unity, you do so not committing to the things that lead up to it, because that's part of the journey. You understand there's going to be a cost. But you commit to the product of a unified community, one in which everyone feels good. It was Malcolm X who said that freedom and peace go together. A person who does not feel like they are free can never be truly peaceful. Think about it, folks. When I come to a community like this that is as truly outwardly affectionate as you are, and you can see it's on the come up. I mean, I'm downtown. I mean, it's a great downtown. Go. But I've seen this story before in other parts of the country where they build up the downtown, but they don't build up the people around. Right? Amen. You ain't slick, Chattanooga. I've seen this I've seen this where some developer comes in and convinces some people that if you just build it, they will come. That was a movie. It ain't never truly happened. You have to build the community up around it so the authentic growth can be sustained. Otherwise, you're just going to have really expensive condos that don't nobody feels safe enough to live in. And the notion that, well, we'll just get empty nesters and older people to move downtown. They ain't moving downtown when they scared. You think that they're that concerned about cutting grass back in the suburbs? Man, you're crazy. They will hire somebody to cut their grass. As fast as you can say, Jimmy Cricket. You got to understand that it's not enough to build the physical. You have to build up the people. That's the true infrastructure of a community that grows. That's the only way a community grows. grows is when you grow the community from the community. And growing it from the community means that you grow it from the children on out. I've yet to see a child of any color have an inherent advantage simply because they are somehow born smarter. I don't know what God anybody in particular is committed to in here, but I've yet to hear a God who genuinely believes that color is what separates ability. All the studies have been done. The data is pretty clear that our grandmother said one time, people is people. And so if people truly are people, if that is the case, and if you wish to have a community, then you have to understand that you cannot do what you've done the same way you've been doing and expect something different to happen. It breaks my heart to see that you have a burgeoning gang issue. If you've never experienced that before, because I've been in communities where it happens, it's a pretty fast-moving cancer. And there's not an easy solution to it. And even the solution is painful. Because ultimately you end up locking up and or watching die some of your most talented leaders. Some of the most talented, mainly young men that this community has produced will take their leadership skills to that cause. Once that happens, it starts to get rough for everybody. Because Chattanooga is a small town, really. One of the cool things about a city like this is it's just a small town. Everybody knows everybody. So there's so much skin that you have in the fight. You're either related to the shooter or the victim. In some cases, both. You don't want that. If I could beg you, I thought that would take you there, then I would beg you, you don't want that. I'm telling you, you don't want that. It's not a local issue. It's not a localized issue. It doesn't stay in one part of the community. It moves really fast. It feeds off of your successes. The things that you think matter are the things that they think matter too. The places that you go, the places they want to go. We can help police in the area of MLK where you're trying to build up. That's not the answer. That ain't going to do it. A bike path ain't going to save you from crime. I'm not paying attention. I don't care how big you make that bike path. They ride bikes too. So what do we do? Because this is solvable. What we do is what you've already done. You're already on the course to make it happen. You are actually everywhere you need to be to make this thing happen. What I need you to do is I need you to make sure that all those churches that y'all going to go to tomorrow and cut them in on your revenue for the week, that you rap to your pastor and say, hey, look, bro, hey, look, sis, here's the deal. We got to come up out of here. We got to work together. Those organizations that you're connected to, fraternities, sororities, who pulled this together, this is just the beginning. This is fantastic. This shows you power right here. This is power when it is spent. Otherwise, it's just another meeting with black people. So, once we understand that, then we understand that this is not just a black issue because we didn't get this hole by ourselves. In fact, I submit to you, we ain't even asked to be in this hole. So since we ain't really asked for this, we sure could use a handout. Which means that black and white have to truly come together in a real conversation. Not that diversity thing again, right? Where you expect that we're going to say something that isn't going to hurt your feelings. Well, I'm just telling you right now, my feelings are already hurt, so you're going to hear some things from me that are going to hurt your feelings. because hurt people hurt people. I'm kind of messed up. You can't raise an entire community who can see that they're in what essentially is a social coma, right? They can see what's going on in the rest of the world. They drive through the same communities you drive through, no matter how many times you put a police officer at the front of the street and try to stop every single one of us. Yeah, I don't think I was paying attention, I guess. We need all parts of the community. We need middle-class black people who I truly love and sometimes don't really like. Because sometimes we forget. Sometimes we forget that we left some folks behind. It wasn't intentional. Some of them we should have left because they acted kind of foolish. We need to leave them because they needed time out. But there's some others that we left and didn't ask for this. And nieces and nephews and little cousins and them as a group. We need to create a greater passage out for them too. Some of us went through a program like an Upward Bound. Some of us went through some other after-school program or with Big Brothers Big Sisters or Boys and Girls Club or any other organization. Some of us were in the Delta organization or the Capitals organization or the Q's organization, the other youth organization. Some of y'all were with the Alphas or whoever you were with or anybody else. To say this, I know when I start saying it, if I leave one out, it's like, that's why I don't always like middle-class black people. Y'all are a lot. You, your Jacks, and your Jills, all y'all. You get offended when I talk about Jack and Jill. Like, ain't nobody supposed to know. Shh, don't nobody know we have kids in the group, so they'll date the right people.
Look out now.
And you pay for it. That's funny. So like people like, so we have a problem with Jack and Jill now? Somebody will explain it to you later. So here's the deal. What we're going to need to do really is we're going to have a conversation. Y'all going to have to be honest with one another that in order to get to the next level, you're going to have to make some differences. Can't do things the same way you've been doing it, which means specifically you have to specifically make some changes to the most important resource of all, which is education. And to create more opportunities for children to go to better schools. We have to do it now. 5-year plans don't do anything for children. 5-year plan is something that grown people come up with because it's just 1 year after their election. So in the life of a child, that's pretty much the whole story. 5 years is the whole deal. We lose 5 years for a child, we've pretty much checked out on that child. And I'm going to submit to you that you may have already forfeited a generation or two. It would be a good time to stop. It'd be a good time to stop. It'd be a good time to understand that in order to make something happen, you have to make it happen now. There's an urgency here. Every single one of these beautiful kids been brought here today or hasn't been brought here, every single one is playing basketball or football somewhere, they're deserving because they're your kids. Don't answer the question like where these kids come from. You don't really want that conversation. You know where they came from. Same, they make kids the same way they've always made it. Maybe there's different music playing in the background. They all make the same. Public Enemy fan myself. I'm political in all that I do. Folks, we got to be honest with each other. We got to love each other enough to be honest with each other. We love each other enough to be respectful of when we've been honest with one another. And it doesn't mean, because sometimes I say, but I'm just being honest. Well, what you just said I don't like. Even if you are being honest, you could have held that one. There's a way in which we're going to have to communicate with one another so that we can engage in community. It's not about creating further dissonance or discord. It's about bringing people together. And the way in which we're going to bring people together is we have to unite around a single principle. And the single principle is that our children deserve better than what we've given them thus far. If there's a single person who came here today and thinks that this is the best that Chattanooga can do, I'm sorry for you. I cannot imagine that you woke up on a Saturday and you came down here today thinking that we've already done the best that we can do. Because we've all essentially agreed that it's not the best that we can do, that there's much more that we can do, and we have to do it across the aisle, across colors, across the tracks, and every other place. Then what we have to also do is be willing to make significant, fundamental, and dramatic change now. As in right now. Which means that the next school year cannot begin with the same set of principles. That we have to look at things differently. That when you see a school that has failed for generations, it's not enough to say that, well, my kids don't go there, or those people just choose to go there. When you know that it's a districting issue, which means they go there because they have to. And then you ask yourself, why really is there a district? And people say because of local property taxes. Well, you know daggone well that you receive money also from the state and federal government, which means I'm paying for some of y'all kids as you're paying for mine. So really, what does the district do? Except to keep certain kids in a bad situation, but none of you believe that that child really belongs. I mean, I got to believe that in your hearts, as polite and as Christian as many of you are, that you cannot believe that this is okay. I mean, you just can't. You cannot believe that if you send a child to an F school and he gets an A, it's still an F, that that's a good thing. Knowing that some schools are offering simply more information and just giving kids more information. So you have better instructors and a better school leader. Because they have better instructors and a better school leader, then in fact they are getting better results. We have to side with the children, not with grown people. It can't be about maintaining the system so that the people who we are friends with get to keep their jobs. That's not what this is about. Keep in mind there's a net number of children anyway. So if you got 100 kids, for instance, for every 100 kids, you got about 20 teachers. So that those teachers don't necessarily lose their jobs. They got to go somewhere where the children are. The only thing that should stand in the way of them keeping their job is their capacity, not the children. So as you think about these strategies, it's important for you to understand that if you don't know, if you're not some person who's big on education reform and that's not really your thing, think of it as a parent. If you can't think of a policy, if you can't Google a policy, you spend 2 hours looking for a table cloth, you can't spend 15 minutes looking for an ed policy, that's cool, but here you could do this. What would you do for your kid? If you can't remember what you would do, think of what you did do. Where did you send your child to school? And why? Because that's the same exact experience that every single parent needs to have access to. Imagine, if you will, being a parent who has no choice at all. No one here, please tell me, that there's no one in this room who thinks that they are so deserving of choice and other people are not. Remember those unearned advantages that we spoke of earlier. So if there are unearned advantages, then we have to accept there are unearned disadvantages. And one great disadvantage is not being able to choose where your child goes to school. And so if we could only offer school choice, then we would have at least begun to change the trajectory and the system that was founded in 1635. We would at least begun to have a true conversation about coming towards, commuting towards, come to unity. We've changed the conversation from one of diversity to one of true power and equity. Not equity that is given, but equity that is provided through a series of decisions that are allowing individuals to gain access to a system that they were for so many generations locked out of. And once we do all these things one after the other, what we come up with is a true community. See, at the end of the day, really, one of the things you truly have right is maybe we shouldn't have portion control. Maybe our plates should be so big that everybody can have some. Maybe we shouldn't put ourselves in such an intellectual ghetto where we think that only some people deserve, but invite everybody over with that same politeness, with that same authenticity of Christianity or spirituality. That in fact we do not have to have portion control for the most precious of all resources, which is education. Because at the end of the day, what you truly understand is that education is to us what religion is to other people. That for some people, you hear someone preach the word. To preach the word is to preach what is believed to have come from the Word of God. And so if you preach the word, you have to do more than just say it out loud. Someone has to teach the word, but the spoken word is just spoken if it is not learned. And we recognize that when a word is learned, when it is truly internalized, it is to make you more whole, more God-like. See, what happens when you truly get in touch with the word, a word, through education, what you become is more aware of who you are in the world. And it is impossible to truly ever enslave a person who has been educated. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in a prison, but he was never in prison. We can no longer allow ourselves to raise children who are imprisoned by the ignorance of being in an F situation any longer. They do not deserve it. We do not deserve it. They deserve to ingest and feel the word so that the light of the world shines upon them. So that the more they understand the word, the more they become more human. And the more human they become, the more humane they become, meaning the more willing they are to look at the other person. With greater education, what happens is people are simply safer people. When a person has a college degree or greater, they're virtually prohibited by statistics only for committing violent crime. In fact, education is one of the only social elements that, if increased, always improves quality of life. Improving income doesn't necessarily improve quality of life. And so as you think about community, think about what role you play in bringing people together. Thank you so much for your time and attention. So, thank you. I'll answer whatever questions you have. Some of them you can put up on Twitter. If it comes up there, that'd be cool. If not, there's a question up there. I will do what I can to answer your questions. One of the things I know about my community is that we get this thing that happens to us when we get a mic. We have 2 questions and a comment. We usually get just the comments. So I'll do what I can to shoot around the room as fast as possible.
Can somebody turn on the mic? The cordless mic?
There it is.
Right about the home.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to thank whoever brought you here. Okay, that's important. I have a couple of questions. I am a strong advocate of the Parent University. Because, and I don't know whether you can hear me or not.
Yep.
But I have found, since I moved to Chattanooga, that people always say, well, the parents should do this, and the parents should do that. The parents need to take a more active role in their kids' lives. But I find that today's parents, now I'm almost 83, so I find that today's parents need help. They need help in helping their kids to navigate the educational system as well as life. I don't think a lot of the parents have the tools to do that. Our parents, yes, they need to be empowered to do something to advocate on behalf of their kids. They need the tools to advocate on behalf of the community. One of the things that I personally take pride in doing is building capacity in communities. I work at East Chattanooga. I don't know whether I told you about East Chattanooga, but I have developed 3 block leader groups because people are uninformed, and if you're not informed, you're not empowered. You don't know what's going on. So I would appreciate if you would, if you know something about Parent University and the role it plays in helping to empower our parents, I would appreciate that. And if you know anything about the rite of passage for young men. If you know any programs, I'm interested in any successful programs in the United States that deals with the rite of passage.
Thank you very much. Give it up. So I am familiar with Parent University, and it's run differently in different parts of the country, but generally speaking, what Parent University is an organization, or it's a strategy of educating parents about how to be successful in engaging the community, as well as it's both political and personal, that parents will learn how to support their children with their homework, communicate with school, and the like. So that's Parent University. And you have a number of groups right here in terms of youth, and more specifically African American men. We're here with the National Center for Men. Male, y'all got a long name, brother. I need to buy a vowel. Can you make it spell something? National Center for the Development of Boys. You gotta give me a vowel in there so I can say something with it. So you have the National Center for the Development of Boys right here. I mean, it's not very far from there. And the work that they're preparing to do, I think, is going to be exciting. So you have local, and then there are others as well here, and they'll show themselves to you before, I'm sure, we go. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. As a parent as well as an educator, how do we create more resiliency with our children and our students? Because they're exposed to so many different things that in our generation we just didn't have access to. And some of them just aren't, for lack of better terminology, just aren't tough enough. They can't handle things. How would you, what are some suggestions you have for that?
Yeah, so that's the thing that trips me out too. I can't lie. Bunch of soft kids. It's tough for me. And even softer parents. I don't know the answer, because if I figured it out, I would have them in our schools. I coach my son's youth football team, and we're not very good. And no, we're not. The record speaks for itself. And I spent a whole bunch of time during tackling drills saying, you do understand this is tackle football. You actually have to tackle a child who has a helmet on, like you. So what I've struggled with, in all seriousness, what I've struggled with is so many parents are all too willing to make excuses for their children that what they end up having is a child who will always need excuses made for them. I see so often parents who will seize any opportunity they can to somehow weasel their way out of having their child take responsibility. I mean, let's just say that the teacher was wrong and she gave your child a detention and he wasn't supposed to have one. I mean, really? So he has a detention. Not send him to prison. He'll stay after school for another 60 minutes. Are you really tripping over that? Do you want him home that badly? So one of the big problems that we're faced with is that we have too many parents, quite frankly, who are all too willing to make excuses for nonsense. I mean, just straight up nonsense. And so the children are not forced to deal with it. And I want to make it abundantly clear, I'm not talking about poor people here. I want you to understand every single socioeconomic strata I've ever worked with, I am telling you, it's disgusting. I go visit colleges and I hear stories of students' parents coming to the college campus to cuss out a professor. Are you serious?
Right.
Right.
I mean, it's just absurd. And so I don't understand how. And here's the other thing. So I'm just going to say it how it is. And then I see kids come from other countries. All other, no particular country in particular, but I see kids come from other countries, they ain't playing. They ain't playing with your kids. They will read their valedictorian speech through a thick accent. Because they're not a punk. They just figure a way. And so I think, you know, I really do think that this is the scourge of our country right now. I really do. I use my son's football team as an example because it is a microcosm of the suburban lifestyle, apparently, that I'm being introduced to. We've lost the last 4 games. They get goodie bags at the end. I'm talking about real, like bulging, with all kinds of ridiculous toys. It's like they went to a birthday party. Like, did y'all just watch them get straight? And so, I tell my son all the time, you better not even, I swear for God, you touch, my brother said, I swear for God, you touch that goodie bag if you want to. You fight all the way to the car. I'll slap it right out your hand. Candy all over the place. The point is, we got to start holding kids accountable, and grown people, y'all got to fall back, man. You got to make it easier for somebody to help you with your kids. You know, everybody, I've seen it too from educators, because for real, y'all ain't no better. I have seen people with a hard, as tough as nails teachers. I've had that kid in the school. Well, I'd like to see the policy. Are you serious? You want to see the policy that says that I can give your child detention? Okay. The reason why so many of our children suffer, and they do suffer from the lack of persistence, is because there's always been somebody willing to stop it before they got to the uncomfortable part of it. I have seen, you see a lot through youth sports. I see a lot through youth sports, sometimes more than I even see in the school, because there's no filter. I one time saw a mother sitting on the sideline. Excuse my sexism for a second. I was already wondering, like, so where is this going? So she's sitting on the sideline. He's sitting on her lap. And she's rubbing her head. I'm thinking, does he have a wound? Like, I'm expecting to see a gash. He just had a headache. We can't win like that. A kid's not going to suffer through a math problem if his mother's quick to say, or his father's quick to say, oh, I was never good at math. Or these people are pushing for no homework. Talk about we don't have enough family time. Here's your family time. Sit down with your child and do their math. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Dr. Perry, and thank you for being here. Recently, there was an article that came out in the paper. Our son, he's now 13. He read the article. I don't know if he read the entire article. There was a graph. And on this graph, this chart, it had the schools that had the most least effective teachers. And he saw his elementary school at the bottom of this list as being, I think, the second or third with the most least effective teachers. And his current school was like third from the top. And so he went through something for about a week or two. And before we had this conversation, he told me about the article he read. And he said, at my current school, I'm not an A student, I'm kind of a B student right now. And he said, I saw that I'm supposed to be at this school that has the best teachers. And I love my teachers that was at the other school, but they're least effective. And he said, I don't understand that. He said, I tried out for the school where I am. And he said, but do I really deserve to be here? Am I really as smart as I thought I was? So it took me a minute to respond to that, but I ask you, there are children who are, and we live in a suburban neighborhood, and I've even encountered this when we're going to different groups and we do volunteer work and we participate in different things, and people say, oh, what school do you go to? And he says, what school? Oh, you're okay, you don't need our help. And even at this conference, I appreciate it, we heard that too. That, oh, well, you're good where you are. And so to my child, he's thinking, is this the most I can do? But the way we parent, boo, we doing more than this. You're better than this. But how do you respond to a child who has those feelings like, am I where I'm supposed to be?
So thank you very much for sharing that. That's a really important statement and conversation. So there's a couple of things I want to say with regards to that. If you think it's bad hearing that from a child, remember, if you remember like I do, or reflect, or project forward what happens when that young man goes off to college and recognizes that he may not have the skills necessary to be here. So it gets even worse for some other children. This is in part why I'm saying what I'm saying about retooling the system such that children get to go to the best schools with the best teachers. That just because someone is an ineffective teacher doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It doesn't. I've met a lot of nice, but this guy who he was a Spanish teacher, and I knew he was a Spanish teacher because he had a really thick Spanish accent. Now, unfortunately, he was the only person in the class who spoke Spanish because he was a terrible teacher. But a really nice guy, so when I fired him, I said to him, I said, his name, insert the name, if I had a sister, you could date her, because you're a good dude, but you are a horrible Spanish teacher. And we have to be willing to have honest conversations with the adults so that we don't end up in a situation where we're having conversations with a child who can see very simply that his school is at the bottom. And so we have to talk to him and explain to him that there's a lot that he has going for him and build him up and get him to where he needs to be so he feels the way he's supposed to feel. But the facts are the facts. Just like everything that there is, anything that they're keeping score in, there are some people who are better at it than others. And it's just that way. People will say, well, some schools are teaching to the test. Most people who say that their school is teaching to the test are not telling the truth. Because if you're teaching to the test and you're doing that poorly, then you really suck. Because if that's what you're focusing on, and you still get no movement. Now recognize I'm talking about the difference between movement, right? I'm talking about movement. Because I accept that when you get kids who come from very far behind, your challenge is to move them. So moving them may not necessarily get them to where you need them to be by years in, but you can move them. Everything that has life can learn. A tree can learn. A tree can learn to grow. So everything that has life can be taught something. You can train a tree to grow a particular way. So a child can be taught as well. So I think you start with the child and just do what you're doing, which is say, hey, we got you. But I think you have to also pull back and recognize that it's not just your child that you're raising the entire community. And so I'm hopeful that you'll recognize that you therefore have to do something so that all parents have the same exact choice that you have, which is to move.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. My name's Ernest Savoy. My question is this. You talked about doing things fundamentally different than we see them now in order to change the paradigm. So what is it that we need to do in terms of, I come from a family of educators where the philosophy of education is around time on task. And so how do we change the paradigm where we have kids that go to school from, say, 9 o'clock to maybe 2:30, in other parts of the world where kids are doing much better in other places where they go to school from 8 to 5, and sometimes 6 days a week, and they only have maybe a 6-week vacation, in between, in terms of summer vacation. How do we change that paradigm so that we can obviously?
That's a great question. I'm going to extend your question just a little bit further. I mentioned before that the school systems that we currently operate under were developed in 1635 in Boston, Massachusetts, with Classical in Boston. And that school was designed to educate in an agrarian society in which over 90% America was in fact earning its living by growing something or participating in the growth of food or some other agrarian element. Whereas now in this country, even though there are a lot of folks still here who make their living on the farm, the overwhelming majority of this country is in fact not agrarian. We're talking about some 90% the other way, right? So the schools then and now run on an agrarian calendar, meaning that we get the time off that you would have needed to plant crops. We start school at the time you need it in order to take care of the livestock and get home in time to finish taking care of the livestock. That is the current system. Take it one step further. If you go through schools, many of our schools were built in the 20s, and then the next wave of them were built in the 50s. But if you look at them, the phenotype, the actual physical buildings are the same as they were, just separated by classroom walls. But the same strategies that we've always used to teach are pretty much the prevailing strategy of teaching. That someone stands up in front of a whole bunch of other people and they tell them something, and they tell them to write it down. And so, if we're going to make a fundamental shift in the way in which we operate education, while those elements that I just mentioned are all up for discussion, the biggest fundamental change that we need to make is to shift the focus from the adults to the children. Because the current system is more focused on making sure that adults stay in their jobs. That's what we're dealing with now. What we're dealing with is a system that people do not wish to disrupt for fear that some people who are voters will lose their jobs. Children don't vote, and the most disadvantaged children's parents don't vote. So what the expectation is as long as we can keep this system in place and just change the things that we're comfortable with changing, like change out of principal, bring in a superintendent every 36 months. But it is. Get kids uniforms, change the theme of the school, but keep the school calendar the same, keep the school schedule the same. You ask us, no one ever asked the question, I mean it sincerely. Does anyone ever think to ask, why is a class period 60 minutes? Or 45 minutes? Or 47 minutes? Or 49 minutes? Or 82 minutes? Right, why? Who knows? There's no reason. There's actually no academic reason. None. In fact, there's very little research that goes into establishing a school day. I'll tell you why most of them are established that way. Because the school day has been split up into units as an employment measure. So there are only so many minutes that we work in a week in most traditional school systems. And so it has to be broken down into even parts. So it's just a simple math problem. So if there are so many hours in a day, you have to divide it by an equal number that will allow the person to not work so many hours. So that in most cases they get 4 periods that they teach or the equivalent thereof in the course of the day, whatever that equals in terms of the day. Then they get what's called a prep period. A prep period is that meaning a full length of that same period, those units that are broken down. After those units are broken down, then they get what's called a duty-free lunch. Duty-free lunch, which means you can't ask them to do a damn thing. Nothing. And if they do, you will be grieved by your local union that says you cannot, even if you want to, work with a child during that time. Because if you do, then we will grieve you and we will make you stop. Take it one step further. The day ends at a time that was established again 300 years ago. Same time. Because back then, they didn't have electricity. So we're running a school system that doesn't make any sense to the people who use it every day. The people who use it every day don't know why. Ask any teacher, why is your class period the length it is? Why is the school day the length it is? Why do we go to school 5 days a week, not 6 days, not 7 days? Why? Why do we go 8 months and get every imaginable holiday off? But what people don't understand, so let me explain to you the implications of the current system, just so we're clear. So what happens then, with this current system, during the school year, about, and give it a take, right? So I'm just speaking broad generalities. Every 3 or so weeks, there's a break. So right when you get them going, there's a break. Any teachers here? Am I saying it right? Did I say it right? All right. So they ride it with you. So so you finally get some movement. You finally get them going. Break. Then you send them to the house that you needed them not to be in the first place. Get them back. Bigger break. Say it right? Long break. Then there are these silly breaks in the spring, in the winter. No one knows why. But the reason why is because the union and the school district agreed to a certain number of days a year. And if you extend beyond those days, which are broken down into seconds, then you have to pay beyond that in minutes. So if you extend beyond it by a second, 1 hour and 1 second, it becomes a half hour in many districts or a full hour after. Nothing so far about brain research that we have so much information on. There is so much. I'm a geek like this, so just bear with me on this one. You gotta get me on this one. Just as parents, and I'm being dead serious because you got a beautiful little daughter. Please do, just Google some brain research. When you start to read some of the brain research, and then you lay that over the top of the current school system, you say, they don't work. We're talking about people who cut people's skulls open, been studying this for generations. This is not some voodoo stuff. This is the real deal. So we continue. So most school districts are 185 to 187 days. 185 to 187 days, give or take, right? They get, in some cases, between 8 and 10 weeks off. I want you to do something and then stop doing it for 10 weeks. Like teaching. And then, this is what happens. Come back late August, early September. For most children, there's what's called summer learning loss. They've only been studying this for about 150 years. It's true. Summer learning loss is, you may as well study whether water is wet or fire is hot. Because we know. It's called summer learning slide. Everyone knows it. They lose as much, if not more than 2 months worth of information. Go back to the school year. So you start late August. For the next 2 months, you teach what you're supposed to taught last year. And then what happens? A break. A break. It's a break. It is definitely insanity, and that's why I'm saying in order for Chattanooga to change, you have to look at things the way they really are and start asking honest questions about such things as this. Folks, again, I thank you for coming out. We could have done this all day, all night, but I hope I've given you enough to work with, for you to come together, to come towards unity, to make the changes that your children, and quite frankly, you deserve. Thank you so much for your time and attention.